America is becoming less woke. The Economist, of all people, did a deep dive on the cultural revolution that has sparked a counter-revolution. Some of the statistics they cite: the share of Americans who consider sexism a very or moderately big problem peaked at 70% in 2018 in the aftermath of Me Too. The share believing that women face obstacles that make it hard to get ahead peaked in 2019 at 57. With us now, comedian and actor Rob Schneider. You may know him from his movies Grown Ups or The Benchwarmers. His time on Saturday Night Live as well. We'll get to that. New book out, You Can Do It. Speak Your Mind, America. Rob, good to see you. Welcome to the program. Is that what's happening, that America is speaking their mind and all of a sudden the woke movement is dying?
Well, I would hope so. I mean, I wrote the book to kind of encourage it. As my friend James Lindsay from New Discourses says, he thinks the woke empire, which is nothing but Marxism redressed as manners, he says it'll collapse between 12 and 18 months. And I think he's right. I think people are sick of it. You know, what happens is in a free society like ours, it makes us susceptible to people who are bad faith actors. And the people who are crying and whining and complaining the most, we give them the benefit of the doubt and go, well, there must be something they're so upset about. And it's really a manipulation. So I think people now have kind of come to their senses. As far as, you know, people speaking their mind, the Cato Institute did a very interesting study just 2 years ago that said that roughly 2/3 of Americans feel like they cannot speak their mind freely out of fear of causing offense. And roughly 1/3 feels like they can't speak their mind, which might cause them job opportunities. That's very new.
No,
we have to have discourse and not just shouting down. We need to have the best ideas come to the surface. And the way you do that is by dialogue. So
that is new, right? That 1/3 of Americans are worried about their jobs if they speak up, if they speak out politically. The polling seems to indicate that Donald Trump supporters are a little more likely to be worried about coming out and speaking up politically than those who support Kamala Harris. But I'm wondering how you came to this in the arc of your career, because typically people from entertainment, Saturday Night Live, successful actors, that's not the people who end up writing the book about free speech.
Well, you saw a contraction in free speech during COVID. Actually, before COVID, it was during the Obama administration where he put into legislation to allow propaganda from government agencies to directly propagandize Americans, which is really something that hadn't happened since the Woodrow Wilson administration. So that was 2013. So you've seen a real contraction in freedom. I mean, you have Mark Zuckerberg, who apologized just a week ago for violating Americans' First Amendment rights, free speech, with the Biden-Harris administration. So at a certain point, you have to say, that while the Democrats want to paint themselves as the good guys, they're not.
So how much of this book is political versus cultural?
Well, I think it's like it talks about the cultural tides, and the idea that there's a line. There is no line. It's just kind of goes back and forth. And the comedians. I mean, what happened is comedians were the de facto intellectuals, and I mean that during COVID and slightly before and after, you had people, scientists who were silenced through the Biden administration, and they were silenced even though they were correct, like Bhattacharya, Dr. Corey, Peter McCullough. These are doctors who were correct, and they silenced them. And then you had and the other scientists became silenced because they didn't want to lose their.
So how does this work going forward? The pendulum, I think you rightly point out, swung pretty hard one way. And you had the combination of COVID, the Biden administration, the brave new world of censoring social media all come together. We pointed that out a lot on the show. How is it swinging back?
Well, you would hope that Americans have had enough of it. But at the same time, you have Kamala Harris and Tim Walz who are saying that free speech is a privilege, which is completely incorrect. It is a right. It is our First Amendment right. It's what our founding fathers said. Even more important than guns, the real protection against tyranny was the rights of Americans to speak their mind. And so that was, I think that's a mistake. And I really feel like whether it's AOC or whether it's Kamala or whether it's Tim Walz, you really have people who want to control your speech. And I would just say to all Americans and everybody watching out there, the people trying to censor other people are never the good guys. And that's the Democrats right now.
Okay. Well, look, you make a great point that anytime you're trying to censor the other side, it says something about your own arguments. There is an issue of relevancy, right? That the typical liberal Hollywood elite, and I would argue sort of New York elite, have lost a lot of relevance. Even the media has lost a lot of relevance. The typical establishment media has lost a lot of relevance because of what they went along with. You talked about credibility with COVID. There were some other issues as well. You had a great career on Saturday Night Live. I'm thinking about how Saturday Night Live defined the 2008 presidential race, especially when it came to Sarah Palin. Take a look.
You know, Hillary and I don't agree on everything.
I believe that diplomacy should be the cornerstone of any foreign policy.
And I can see Russia from my house.
Yeah.
And that was the end of Sarah Palin. She became a punchline. Does Saturday Night Live still have that power? Saturday Night Live is live for the first time this election season on Saturday night. Your predictions?
Well, I mean, I think that Saturday Night Live traditionally has always leaned left. I mean, most comedians, most people in New York do. And I think that they're in a better place now. They've been making fun of Biden as to the ends of last year, and they have a really good cast now. I will say I think they lost their footing for a little while, but that's anytime you have any establishment, entity, and, the establishment, Saturday Night Live is an establishment. It is, and so it's corruptible. But I think that they also can correct itself. I think they're a really terrific organization. I think if you just take a look at the firing of the guy that the man that they fired, the comedian, for insensitive remarks, and then he ended up hosting. The same thing with Norm Macdonald. He got fired for OJ jokes, and then he came back a year later to host. So I think that they have the I think they have the wherewithal to make corrections to it. And hopefully that it should always go after the people in power. And the audience knows if it's funny or not. I mean, sometimes I think during COVID, I think you had a kind of a no footing for some of the late night comedy. I think that, if you look at Steve Colbert and the dancing syringes, I think that was something out of like the Soviet bloc or something out of the Khmer Rouge. It was something that was very egregious.
Well, look, Colbert, Kimmel, and others have gotten crushed in their ratings.
Yeah, well, if you take a look at the number one late night, the number one late night guy.
People vote with their feet. Hey, Rob, we appreciate it. Great having you on. Congrats on the new book.
Thank you so much for having me, Leland.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.